everyone. We are live for another B2B episode. I am so excited for today. You guys actually not only put in so many comments regarding toxic leadership and wanting to understand how to overcome that, what needs to get done, that today is going to be an exceptionally special day. If you have questions, put it in the comment. Christine will answer it as best as we can. If you have a comment as well, put it in. And always remember, if we don't answer it during the live, it will be answered later on. So once again, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're new to the channel, I'm so glad that you're here. And don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and share button. Christine, how are you today?
Things are great. How are you?
I am fantastic. As I mentioned while we were backstage, I had to pull over the car because we had a super busy day today. And now I'm using my phone because the show must go on and
The
people
show
are
must go on.
excited. Yeah, and people are actually excited to talk about
Yes.
toxic leadership, how to overcome it. And I see the viewers are coming in. Remember, as you guys are coming in, if you have questions or comments or insights on this, please share it. And we will answer it as best we can. Christine, please introduce yourself, share who you are, who you serve, and how you are positively influencing others.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm Christine Fonner, and I founded Roam Your Soul, which is a women's community for adventure-based leadership development. I've spent over 20 years in leadership development spaces and really have a passion for supporting women in the unique challenges that we have to become leaders and to become great leaders. And so that's really the work that I do.
And how are you positively influencing people? I know
Oh,
that's the
right.
work, but I want to know.
Well, first and foremost, life is too short. So the joy around, leadership is really important to me. So really the positive influence is around, really recognizing that we're redefining leadership one story at a time, one woman at a time, one person's lifetime at a time. And so creating spaces for radical care is what I call it. Radical care and joy and love in the workplace is incredibly important. This is leadership. You can be a leader from your car just as well as you can from a studio. So, I think that's the big piece of the impact is, as women, we have not always been part of the conversation around what leadership really is. And we need to really be driving that more. And so that's how I'm impacting the world. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
I had
There
my
you go.
mic off because I want to make sure I wanted to make sure that you can get all your conversation out fully.
Mm,
I don't have all my notes with me, but I think
mhm.
we will be able to be successful in this. When it comes to toxic leadership, I sometimes I think people might be going to the extreme, and then other times it's a valid toxic relationship. Now I'm going to share this before I ask my question. It maybe a boss is demanding a bit. Some people might call that toxic versus a boss who's more passive aggressive, and they may think that that person is not toxic, but maybe they're full of gossip, right? Or they're
Mm.
hindering them in their journey. And I think that that can be toxic. Can you kind of define a bit what that is? What's toxic leadership?
Absolutely. Toxic leadership is really about a leader who intentionally or unintentionally does things that really negatively impact you to a traumatizing level. And so I know, like, similarly to toxic, trauma can also be used in a spectrum, right? And, the way we use words really defines our reality. And so if I feel that you are being offensive to a way that, to a degree that is impacting me so negatively that I'm unable to function in my role, I would consider that toxic. Perception versus intention is really what we're talking about, right? That as a boss, my intention might not be to negatively impact you. In fact, most leaders wake up in the morning and want to impact for positive and for good. They don't wake up going, I'm going to be the worst leader you've ever experienced, right? I'm going to be super toxic. 85% of leaders fell into their roles without any formal training. So you have the majority of leaders globally are there without really knowing how to hold the well-being of others in their hands, right? They've not been trained on it. And so unintentionally, they may cause you harm, and that's toxic. As a leader, it's your responsibility to know that and own it in ways that you can mitigate it. Now, the other side of that are the intentional toxic leaders, and those are the abusive ones, the ones that are pushing others down to lift themselves up. They will sabotage you and hurt you on purpose for their means to an end. And so that's real. And so you can be intentionally or unintentionally toxic.
I thank you for sharing the difference about the intentionality and the unintentionality, and also sharing a statistic that 85% of the world, yeah, that is mind blown, because there's like what, 8 billion people, 7 billion people in the world. So 85% out
Right, and
of
it's
those.
because you're like, you're good at what you do, right? Like, I'm a good individual contributor. I'm a good accountant. I'm a good, I'm a good secretary. I'm a good engineer. Like, I'm good at something, and I'm
Mhm.
recognized for that, and I'm rewarded for that. I'm really good at telling people what to do. I'm really good at delegating. I'm really good at task managing. You're rewarded for being good at something. And in that reward comes promotion. We want to climb that corporate ladder and make the money, right? We want the big title. And what we find, though, is that we may not really have been prepared for that. And the truth is, some people don't want to climb the ladder. I talk about the jungle gym instead of the ladder, right? Like, maybe I don't want to lead people, but I want to make more money. I want to have a better title. So I'm going to take that role, even though people are not my passion. I talk about leadership being a type 2 fun, right? You have to really recognize it's a calling to be a great leader. And so it's type 2 fun. It's not fun at all. It's really hard. But the fun is when you accomplish that good leadership knowledge and the good leadership skill base, where you're able to really lift up others and impact and influence for the greater good, right? And that calling is hard. And so if you fall into it, like most of us do because we're good at something, then it's your responsibility to take the call and actually do the work to become good and become great, or just don't do that. Get on the jungle gym in a different direction. Don't go into people leadership.
Very well explained and thought out. Thank you so much, Charles. Thanks. Charles agrees with you. Remember, if you have a comment, please share. If you have a question, please share. And allow the comments, please, to pertain to what we're discussing. It will be most helpful. Christine, I agree with you. You talked about the intentionality and the unintentionality. You also went down talking about there's some people who they just want the higher rank, right? Or they want a better pay structure. I remember my time in the military. I was horrible as a leader. I had zero clue how to lead. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not even gonna pretend. I'm sure people hated me at one point because I was tapping into the masculine side of leadership because that's what I knew. And I thought I had to like scream at the top of my lungs the way they were doing it. I thought I had to find this like strong voice that I thought was powerful because that was just weird. It was just so strange. But then when I started to become intentional about, hey, how do I what am I looking for? What type of leader do I want to be? How can I form and bond and strengthen the team so we can actually work together to accomplish the goal so we can get it done in the most effective way, and then be like, all right, let's relax for a minute, right? And that intentionality made a huge difference, and it created a lot more success. And guess what? It's kind of like saying bees are attracted to honey, right? It's the same thing. I switched it. I became who I the leader that I needed to be within. So there's that. John
Mhm.
mentioned perception versus intention. Thank you, John, for saying that he agrees with it. Um, Now, John says here as well, thanks, John, for your comment. He says, we learn leadership skills from the leaders we've experienced. Can you, Christine, share a bit about that? Because, yes, I agree with John, but then you talked about the intentionality.
Mhm.
So maybe I'm like
Yeah.
intentionally trying to be a good leader, but I'm still
Mhm.
toxic because
Well,
I
how do
am
you like?
expert.
Yeah, I was like, how do you know you're an expert, right? And I think
Yeah.
sometimes people look at the word expert and there's semantics involved with this, right? That I can say I'm an expert and people will be like, wow, she's full of herself. Or I'll say I'm an expert and you'll say, oh man, she's an expert. I can trust her. But like, why? How? When you go to your doctor, you don't ask him what his GPA was. He has an MD at the end of his name. You trust him. He's an expert, right? But right? And so I think, what John's mentioning here about, we learn from the leaders we've experienced. Yes, when we first start. And to your point, Delisa, like sometimes we have to recognize at a certain point in our leadership career, we have traumatized other people. We have harmed other people. And we have learned from those, but the truth is like those still stick with you. There's still moments that I think back to that I could cry, that I could be really full of shame because I just didn't know better. And so most people that come into leadership start building their leadership practice by saying, well, I remember having this leader and I'm never doing that. Right? Like I'm not going to be like that toxic leader I had, or oh man, she was such a micromanager. I'm never going to micromanage. Like you start by saying, well, this is what I'm not going to do because I've seen that, I've experienced that, and I don't want that. And you've also had these amazing leaders that you've had in your career. And you're like, man, I would love to be more like that. I want to be like my mentor, Marshall. I want to be like my coach, Sarah. Like, I want to be like that. That person's special. That's good leadership, is when you can start discerning between what is good to you and what is not good to you. But the truth of it is only 20% of your leadership style reaches your audience. So if I'm only leading the way that I like because that's my experience, I'm missing out on the majority of my audience, because just because I like it doesn't mean other people like it. And that's where good leadership moves to great, is when you really start stepping into what I had talked about, that type 2 fun of the calling. Can I start learning and growing my own leadership practice based on theory, style, strategy, and skills to actually become a great leader, to really hold the responsibility? That's huge, right? To move from a good leader who really cares if this is good or bad to I want to be a great leader who has practice, reflection, and discernment around what makes me an expert leader.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Charles, John, thank you guys for putting in the comments. And we're going to be going through your comments because you guys are putting in some really great things here so that the
Mhm.
conversation can just evolve. I mean, I do have questions, but I prefer that the questions you have or the insights that you're going to share, that makes it
Mhm.
flow more smoothly. Now, Christine, you mentioned 20% of our leadership, which is like when we look at that,
Mhm.
20% is not a lot. It's a lot, but it's not a lot in the big scheme of things. Our team only receives 20% unless we become intentional and we
Dynamic,
gain discernment.
dynamic. You
That's
have to be
that's
dynamic. Mhm.
wow. Before I move on, what does I have to be dynamic mean?
It means that way of one style, one approach, your toolbox has to be pretty hefty to
Mm,
really dynamically lead a dynamic group of humans, right? Like think about all of the personalities and behaviors and experiences and all of the different things that each and every individual is bringing to the table in any given interaction. And now you start getting into the behavioral science around things, right? Like, what are my core values and how do I make decisions? And what baggage am I bringing to the table from my 7-year-old self because you're triggering me? Like these are the things that we're bringing to the table 100% of the time. And so to really recognize that, and somebody mentioned in the chat, when we're under stress, good luck, right? Like, but when we're in dysregulation, when our nervous systems are freaking out, it is really, really hard to be a great leader in those moments. And so having skills and tools and strategies to understand behavior, understand nervous system, understand decision making and communication strategies, how to be a conflict resolution oriented person, how do you hold people together, how do you see people together and help them come together. I mean, if I only did it one way, so if I only communicated with you very directly, so I'm very direct and very strategic, right? I want you to get this done and get it done by 5. Thanks. That works sometimes, and it's important sometimes. Like the one time that my husband yelled at me to get my ass moving, sorry, arse, moving, because I need to move out of that mountainous area that had the avalanche coming. That was real, right? And he needed to use a command style in that moment. So I just did it. Reaction, go. Something's unsafe, right? Now, later I was upset he yelled at me, but he did probably save my life, right? But that wouldn't work in a situation where you come to work with you had a bad morning and you have these personal things going on. And I'm like, well, you need to do this, this, and this. That's not relational at all. And maybe you needed a little bit more emotional, relational connection to be able to get over whatever was going on before you walked through the door. So that's what I mean by dynamic. If I only come at you in one way, in one style, and what I like or what I need, I'm going to lose you 80% of the time because I'm not listening to you. I'm not seeing you for who you are.
What I'm hearing and what I'm understanding, and this is something I do as well, but what I'm understanding, and I hope everyone else is picking up what she's laying down here, is that we have to not only be intentional, we have to do the work. If you are in a leadership position, yes, sometimes they have the workshops and they have a facilitator and they may have a speaker come in your place of work, or perhaps you have a coach that you're working with, but it doesn't end with one, like a 3-month program or a 1 weekend retreat. It is a continuous, intentional action. It has to fit into your daily routine, into your daily habits, because that means,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, your communication has to expand. Your listening skills have to expand. Your speaking skills have to expand. All of these soft skills, I just named those 3, but all of those soft skills are important. They are necessary that in order for you to dynamically lead effectively, so that you and your team, you are always in sync to get the job done. Christine mentioned her husband had to tell her, move your arse. Why? Because there was an avalanche coming. He didn't want her to have to go up. He wanted her to stay with him for a long bit, I'm very sure. So what did she do? She didn't stand there and talk back. Why? Because she recognized, okay, there was something different in his tone. There was something different
Mm-hmm.
in his approach. There was something different in his action. I didn't see it, but I trust my husband. And of course, he's her husband. She's like, I trust him. And she just started moving. That's that same relationship or dynamic, similar with your team that you need to have, where they are trusting that when you say move, they're moving, right? Steve Jobs, I think, would be well, I have my own thoughts on that, but
Well,
similarly.
you make a great call out, right?
Mhm,
That these are all great concepts, but trust is key, which
mhm,
means you have to care. If you have to really care, because if I didn't trust my husband or he did something to upset me so to the core before that, where I was like, forget that guy, I don't know what he's talking about. That reflects on the success or failure of that moment, right? And in that case, it was a life threatening situation, right? With giving that example as like a really great way to see it, right? how big this can be. But trust is critical. And I was just talking to someone earlier today about, when you start going into the uncomfortable conversations, or the conversations where trust is put on the table, sometimes we're validated and surprised at how wonderful it feels to know that we're connected and trusted by our people. But sometimes we're also surprised by, oh, I thought we had more trust here, but I'm seeing that maybe you don't trust me as much. So how would you know my intention? Right?
And very well stated. Charles put in the comments here for those you guys see. He says leadership is learned based on previous models and personal initiative to learn more. Years later, so many leaders have to unlearn these bad
Hmm.
behaviors. Now you're studying this, Christine, and you're going
Hmm.
for a PhD in this. And for everyone, please reach out to Christine if you are. I believe it's entrepreneurial leadership. She needs surveys done. Has she needs your help. Okay,
Yeah.
so connect with Christine. I'll get more information from her later, but connect with Christine so you can help her with this journey. But this comment I really wanted to put up because it is true. There are a lot of leaders who are unlearning their bad behavior. Now I mentioned with Apple, the Apple founder. What's his name? I can't remember his
Hmm.
name now.
Steve
I just
Jobs.
said it. Steve Jobs. I couldn't remember his
Hmm.
name. Um, People didn't like him, but some people loved him. Some people thought he was too
Hmm.
direct. Some people was like, he's mean. And with Elon Musk, when, for example, I mean, he made headlines just with Twitter when some people were sleeping on the floor and they were saying all of these things. Would that be considered toxic?
It
These
depends on
kind
it depends on who you're
of,
talking to, right? It depends on who you're talking to and what values you're bringing to the table. So, what's really important in those situations are to look at, what are my core values and does it align with what I see? Right? So when I hear about, Amazon employees not having time to go to the bathroom and finding unique solutions to that, when I hear about employees sleeping underneath their desks, which I have a real life situation where that happened in my world, where I found somebody sleeping under their desk. If we see that, if we see you know, people working to an extent that is detrimental to their well-being, does that align with my core values? Now, if my value is to be the next innovative, I'm going to build the next iPhone. I don't even know what it's called yet, right? But I'm going to build it, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to build that next iPhone and be the next Steve Jobs. That's my core value. I'm going to drive myself into there, and I'm going to align to it, and it's going to energize me. But if my core value is violated by that level of self sacrifice to create something amazing and innovative and that's never been built before in that way, it will be a soul sucker. It'll demotivate me, de energize me. It'll make me feel depressed and sad. So the question isn't whether or not that's a good leader or a bad leader. The question is, can you work with that leader in alignment to your core values?
I had to go ooh there because that is, I don't think people have looked at it from that perspective. When they leave a place, they generally thinking, they don't necessarily say this place doesn't align. They'll say I had a bad manager or
Well, I
I
mean, we
had a
all
bad
know that,
leader. Yeah,
we all know that employees don't leave their jobs, they leave their
yeah.
managers.
They leave
Right?
their
I mean, that's
manager, right?
there's statistics all
Yeah,
over the place
yeah.
about that, right? But
Hmm.
people don't leave their jobs, they leave their managers. And so again, that kind of is that type 2 leadership
Yeah,
calling I keep mentioning, right? Is I don't want to be the person that goes home and says, "Yeah, I have high turnover. I don't know why." Like,
yeah,
well, I could tell your people could tell you why, but what do you
yeah.
do about it then? Because
Hmm.
we are human beings too. We have our own emotions and we have our own stressors, and we respond to stress differently. And that's where I think, we go from learning from our experiences and learning from what we're exposed to and learning from others to really moving into leadership practice. And you mentioned, what do we do on the daily? How do I keep learning? And that's where I talk about it as practice. I mean, leadership is an intentional practice. And to really be good at it, to be great at it, that responsibility is big. And that's why it's
Hmm.
type 2 fun. It's not easy. But the reward is to be able to to create innovative teams that can do amazing things without
Mm.
the spirit smashing. Like that's my call to the world is, can we be amazing, innovative, creative leaders building amazing things that would never exist
Mhm, mhm.
while being spirit cultivators, spirit caregivers?
Yes, yes, yeah. Oh my goodness. A few weeks ago, I did a live and I talked about this spiritual communication, and that one was a
Mm.
huge hit. Lots of comments. Like, it was just, it connected and resonated with people. Um, Before I move on to that, though, for some people, they're in a job or they're in their place of work, or maybe they're part of a team and they're thinking to themselves, I don't want to be here. Now, it isn't that their manager or their boss is a horrible person. And sometimes they feel like the environment may be toxic, may or may not be toxic, but they're going through their own emotional stress. Um, can one staff member bring in toxicity, and from that toxicity, based on how the leader's responding, make it seem as if it's the leader who is not
Mhm,
understanding or caring? And you're nodding your head because you're
mhm.
like, yep, I've seen it happen. So how does a leader deal with something like that? How do they approach it?
Cut it out. Negativity and lack of care and toxicity are cancerous, and it
Mhm,
grows. And if I'm trying to build a culture of care, a culture of innovative creativity that's rewarded for the good things in life, right? I want to reward you for these amazing things we can do together. If somebody's not being accountable to their own behaviors, their own actions, their own words, you got to cut it out. And I always say, I can coach you in or I can coach you out. It's your decision, and I will high five you on the way out. But but you have to make that decision whether this is the right place for you. And a lot of that again comes back to my core values are creating healthy work environments that people want to come to every day, for creating safe environments that people can take risks in, right? And so if you're not living by that, then we need to really coach you in and learn how to do that, right? Like maybe you've never learned how to communicate on a team of 5 people. And so you're reverting to some bad behaviors that you need to unlearn, as somebody said, right? I can coach you in on that. Happy to, right? But if you refuse and you don't take those invitations to step into your own leadership, then I can coach you out. There's a better place for you somewhere. I know it. I know there is, but it's not here right now.
right. Thanks, Charles. Thank you, Christine, and thanks, Charles, for mentioning that. I think he's saying sometimes people embrace the suck until you
Mm.
know
Well, and I
we're
always
gonna
say,
leave.
like, don't blow your life up before you have a plan. I
Yeah.
did this really wonderful I have a podcast, called The Executives Lounge, and I interviewed this woman, Lisa Anderson. Look her up on LinkedIn, she's great. She talks about having an exit strategy. So
Mhm.
you when your core values are not aligned and you know you gotta get out, but you still have to pay your bills and you still wanna be a responsible human who doesn't blow your whole life up, you start building an exit strategy, right? And you start building that toolkit and activating and lighting up the network areas that you need. So look up that podcast episode. It's great. Like, yeah, don't blow
Oh
your
yeah.
life up, but recognize you can also give less and
Mhm,
do the minimum you need to do to maintain your reputation as a professional, but
mhm.
you can start allocating some of your other energy towards more positive opportunity, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for sharing that, and it's so true. I'm actually working on something. How to let people go, how to let them go. So I will definitely look her up and connect with her because it's people need to know how do I create this exit strategy, and it is needed right now. It said that on average people go through what 7 jobs now.
Mm,
You're not staying in the same
yeah. Well,
place I
there's no
can work.
reason to, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's no loyalty on either side, which is
yeah,
some like a whole nother topic for another time. But the average person stays in a job 2.3 years right now. And it's
yeah.
because we're incentivized to not. I mean, on average, people make 15% more by jumping. I can leave my job today, go take another offer somewhere else, and immediately make 15 to 25% more.
Yeah, I saw that. Before I retired from my work that I was in, the head of IT of where I was working at the company, he went to another company and he did make more money. And he said, oh, he's just staying there
Mhm.
for like maybe possibly 5 years, 3 or 5 years. And he's going to come right back because he will get a higher salary and he might be in a way better position, even though he was um, the head of the IT department. Right.
Mhm. And so
So,
for as a company, like if you don't want that, you need to pay to retain. There was a
mhm,
great question in the chat about what do you do to recover from toxic leadership? And look, here's a stat for you is it takes when you experience toxic leadership, it is traumatizing and it takes 2.5 to 5 years to really
mhm,
process through all of the impacts that truly traumatizing toxic leadership can really wreak on another person, right? I mean,
yeah.
so really there's a whole slew of recovery resources and tactics you should take. The number one thing you should not do is sweep it under the rug, suck it up, and pretend like it's
Mhm,
it's really not. It really impacts your confidence level, it impacts your sense of self, it impacts your sense of safety, your ability to move on to your next role and get bigger and better. And so, having those resources of, having a coach,
mhm,
having a therapist, having a network of other professionals. And I talk about this when we talk about what is an expert. Part of being an expert is always being connected to your professional community,
mhm.
right? Because that professional community is going to lift you up and support you in a variety of ways and variety of phases of your career. And so always go into your professional network and say, how can I serve you? And what can I learn from you to see what I can do to serve you? And if we all did that, these would feel it would feel less long lasting, I think. We were less alone in the recovery process, right?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Everyone that's continuing to put in the comments, thank you so much. Thanks for asking your questions. We're getting through them. And if you just joined in, please ask your question that pertains to our topic on leadership, toxic leadership, or overcoming it. And also, don't forget to follow Christine on LinkedIn. So, Christine, John puts in a question here. He said, some people are truly abusive and they are toxic. How do we recover from dealing with someone like that? And he does have a point, right?
Mhm.
How do you recover? Because this has lasting
Mm.
impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any moment in your life that's like a defining moment, right? The key piece is, as I was saying, is really lean on network, lean on supports, but also recognize that jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire isn't always a solution either. Sometimes we're so desperate to get out that we don't give ourselves time to recover and to find the better, healthier option. And we end up right in another toxic leadership situation or a toxic organizational situation. And so I would also recommend like we can dissociate actually in healthy ways sometimes, right? That if I need to shut off my exposure and ownership of that toxicity while I recover and create an exit strategy to be able to go find a better option, that's better than jumping right into another toxic experience that just compounds my trauma, right? And so that would be to me like huge is recovery, like any toxic situation, takes supports, therapy, resources, friends, family, being able to talk it out, go for a nature walk, think about it, reflect, but having some planning resources forward. Get yourself a coach, get yourself into your professional network, be able to find out what does better look like, right? How do I know what better looks like when I am in crisis mode? It's really
Mhm.
hard to know what healthy looks like if I'm still in that unhealthy place. So let me call on some resources to help me plan that out, map it out so I can see it and be able to
Mhm.
say, yes, that's it. That's what I want.
I love it because yes, we can, but you don't want to jump out too quickly. You want to be sure that you're taking the right steps. And so sometimes we have to be in the suck, as Charles put it, for a bit, but you have um, an exit strategy that supports you, that supports your finances, that supports your emotional well-being, your health and wellness. And that means sitting down and figuring out, what do I want, where do I need to be, as you mentioned, going into your network, as you mentioned, asking questions, and or getting support, help, either with a coach or a therapist, getting that support.
Right.
So
Well,
that's great.
and in
Go ahead.
that space too, it's learning how to disconnect some of your emotional investment in something that is no longer serving you, and be able to move that emotional and energetic investment into something that you can plan out to serve you better. It doesn't mean that you stop doing your job, right? It's like, don't blow your life
No,
up. What it
no.
means though is I can set healthy boundaries
Yeah.
and make sure I'm not wasting energy in places when I could be using it for myself to get out.
Hmm. Thank you. Tamika shares here that she thinks the best leader are intuitively passionate about people. Now, I think that it's true, but at the same time, there can be some, hiccups with that,
Mm.
because
Well,
I
this is
can
like
be,
this is my life's work, right? Like this is
okay.
this is
So
my this is
share
my life's
share your
work,
thoughts on
right?
this.
So as Delisa mentioned, I'm working on my PhD, and my PhD is in looking at toxic leadership and the impacts on others in leadership, but also looking at what I call radical care leadership. And radical care says we start with love, we start with care, we start with creating places for belonging, because those are the number one motivators of human existence. And so, it's the question of, are you born with care, or do you learn how to care? We are all born intuitively wanting to be loved, validated, and heard. All of us. So is that intuitive? Yeah. Can we all learn how to do it better? Yeah, we're not very good listeners, first of all, right? So so there is some intuition there, because innately, humanely, we all want that passionate care, right? But do we know how to do it, especially when you layer on traumas and life experiences and things that make us feel unsafe? And how do we break those barriers back down and say, well, I can create safe spaces to love and care?
Christine, I hear what you're saying. And, yes, we're all huggy feely. What about the masculine side of it?
Oh, I
Because
know,
there are,
right?
yeah, what's going on? Because there are so many men that will just be like, no, it's this way. Let's get it done. Not that they're not like, well, not really touchy feely, but I mean, yes, they love what they do. They're like, look, I'm
Mushy
passionate. I'm
mushy.
doing my job. Let's just get it done. Right. And it's
Well,
not that it's
my
yeah,
question to people are, how's that going for you?
that's a good question to ask them.
How's that going for you? And in some cases, it's serving a purpose to an extent.
Hmm.
Like you can accomplish great things by being very masculine in your leadership style. I was rewarded for being strategic, being analytical, being direct. I was a very masculine leader in the first few years of my career because it served me well. I was
Hmm.
rewarded for it. But how's that working out for you
Hmm.
when Sarah's yelling at Jane and now they don't work together anymore? They refuse to work together. If you
Hmm.
don't care about what you're going to do about that, that's where the breakdowns start and organizational culture changes, right? That when I don't care, there are toxic pockets all over that organization. So you have to have that balance. And I love talking to men that are like, love. And I was like, hey, if you're not comfortable talking about love in the workplace, leadership might not be for you, because you have to care to be able to convince anyone to do anything. Ask a
Yeah,
2-year-old.
it's true. It's true. The reason why I brought this up is because uh, there are leaders who are men, very, very successful ones. I'm thinking of one in particular, but I wouldn't say his name here. Who is very old school because he like yeah, he's lived so long that he just doesn't care anymore. So he just says whatever. And he comes from a generation where they would say things that would not
Mhm.
would not work in the atmosphere or in a work culture. But he's highly successful because he focuses on the bottom line.
Mhm.
And so he gets a lot of millionaires who and others who, getting into billionaires as well, also billionaires who follow his teachings, and he gives out free teachings and stuff like that on his YouTube, and so on and so forth. And they love what he's doing because he's focused on the bottom line. But it seems to be serving him. Why can't it
Mhm.
serve John down the street?
Yeah. I mean, research is showing, and it shows for the last 40, 50 years, we reward that which, feeds the bottom line. And our society is set up that way. I mean, our GDP is set up that way. We must always grow or we're failing. And I mean, that's a whole nother conversation about, how we're just, utilizing the world's resources to the point where we're not gonna have very many left. But we reward more, 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 more. We reward how much can you get us, right? And that works to a certain extent, sure. But that era is over. That era is over, and it's because, one, we do have limited resources, right? Two is we've been raising our children to have healthy boundaries. We've been raising our children to speak their feelings. We've been raising our children to care about each other and the world around them. And we've taught them how to articulate that. And I am so proud of the younger ones coming up because they're saying, yeah, John, that did work for you, but it doesn't work for me anymore. That era is over.
Oh yeah, I know. My mom, my mom on her work, I'm in my 40s, mid 40s. So of course she's older. She still works, and she's like, the young people, they're talking about their rights, and like she's like, and she says to you, "What about your rights?" Like sometimes she's telling me, she's like, "What do you mean your rights? What about your rights? Just do the work," because she's
Mhm.
just like, Anyways, it's and it's interesting because even though she knows she has her rights and she does stand up for her rights, she actually would read the rule book. She knows exactly what it is she has to do. That's just how she was, because the women of a certain time, a certain generation, they had to learn how to take care of themselves like the hard way. They couldn't be like, well, I have rights because, yeah.
Right. It's a lot.
And
It's a privilege, right, to be
yeah.
able to be in that place. It's a
Hmm.
privilege, but it very much is a privilege. But I think and back to the point of, well, John's real not to call out John by name. John's really
Yeah.
good at making us lots of money, and I don't care how he
Yeah.
does it. I can't get rid of my best sales guy. He's the one
Yeah.
bringing in all the contracts. What do I do about that? It works to an extent, but what research shows is if you follow best practices on good people leadership, it blows any good sales guy out of the water,
Yeah.
and they do better. When you give space for people to lead well, their bottom line is thicker.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. I
Period.
agree. It's true. I agree 100%. Thank you, Tamika, for your comment, because we took a good 10 minutes on this. So it was really good. Lucy, thank you. She's on YouTube. She says, thank you for shedding light on this topic. It's a much needed conversation. And Naeem shares a really inspiring and important topic. Thank you for sharing. I do know in some of the comments that we had before our lives, people were talking about, how they overcame toxic environments and how they had to heal after that. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to point out, and if you could expand a bit on before, like I'll talk about it and then ask the question for you to expand. But I'm seeing that in sales They are their whole thing now is the psychology of sales. You have to
Mm,
ask specific questions in a certain way, and it's not sell, sell, sell. You have to make that connection. In marketing, they're looking to make that connection, because they don't want to come off as um, aggressive. They don't want to come off as being toxic. They don't want to come off as just sales, sales, sales. Now I'm leading into this, and I know the conversation is about toxic leadership, but this part is leadership, because we're seeing how the industry is shifting consciousness, and they're really wanting to tap into the psychology of people for the connection of people. So where do you see leadership going in
mm,
10 years? I would normally say 5, but I think there's so much shifts happening. Where do we see it happening? Like, where's it going?
mm. I mean, what first comes to mind is what's your means to an end? Because what's happening is, coming back to that trust space, is there's so much happening in how we receive information and how we're solicited for sales that we are fatigued by bidding, right? We're fatigued by constantly being bid for having you give me this thing and then I give you money. So there's some fatigue for being bid at all the time. There's fatigue of misinformation and not knowing what's true and what's not true. And so there's a trust concern there. And then the third piece is authenticity. What's your means to an end? We're all bombarded with sales all day long, marketing all day long. And so we're all spidey sense up. If you don't resonate with me from an authentic place of truth and care, I can sense it, I'm out. And I think that's where we're going in the next 5-10 years is we're all, we can all follow the marketing plan. You can make sure that you build connections and you have relationships and you ask the right questions and you don't speak too much, but you don't not speak. And, there is a formula that comes from what's worked for good sales, right? Good marketing. How do we create a brand story? How do we connect with our potential customers? How do we create brand loyalty, right? Brand experience. But what we're going to find is if your end goal does not align to your authentic self and building trust with that person, they're not going with you. Or you might get them once and then they've learned a lesson and they won't come back.
And they won't come back. And that's huge. And that
And we have to
is.
get over the fear, right? So
Mhm.
what happens in entrepreneurship, right, is we start this thing and it's a lot of courage to do it. And then we get fear-based around money. Right? Like I gotta make 50K this month and that would be successful. And if I don't make 50K, then does that make me a failure? How do I hustle and make the 50K? And we get so hung up on this money factor. And we have to because we got to pay the bills and we got to pay our marketing guy, right? Like we got to make money. And that's really important. But if I come at you and say, Delisa, I really need you to buy this scarf for me this month because I need to pay my bills, right? That comes off whether I said that explicitly to you or not. That urgency of survival fear, you can sense from a mile away. And what people really want is for you to say, hey, I am so passionate about this thing that I have found out for myself is like my life's purpose. And like I'm gonna invite you in. And if that resonates with you, like come on in. Right. And if it doesn't, what else can I send you towards? Because I'm not afraid of losing you because you're not right for me right now.
And I really, really love what you just said. I mean, a lot of times I would say I love things, but this in particular, what you just said makes so much sense because you're moving out of fear and you're moving into faith. Faith that even if a client or a potential a prospect may not connect with me today, hey, you know what? I know Jane down the street. Jane can help you with this because anytime anyone gets on any phone call or have a conversation with anyone, either in networking or whatever, you're meeting all kinds of people. You're understanding, surface level what their needs are and what do they want. And so it's saying, I'm not going to be in fear. but I'm going to have faith because I want to help you with your issues, with your problems, so it can be solved. And that person will remember you. That person will think about you because maybe they don't use you today, but in a year from now or in 6 months from now, or guess what? More importantly, they put you in their network. You become
Right.
part of their network. Mhm.
Well, and if you think about it from an energetics space, right? If I'm spending so much time trying to grasp a client that doesn't fit quite right, I'm using that time and energy to try to like wrangle you in and convince you to do this thing. And maybe it's not the right time for you or me, or maybe it's not even the right product or service. Maybe you do need to go over to my friend Jane. She's way better for you. And I'm going to give that so that I can free up my energetic space for what is in alignment for me. Like if I just keep trying to convince you to come into this thing, I'm missing out on putting the energy towards somebody that actually needs that thing.
I We're winding down. I mean, we could go on this conversation forever. And for everyone that has been tuned in since the beginning till now, I know people have been in and out, but we've been consistently over 100 views across all the platforms. Now we're at 160. So thank you guys for everyone that put the comments, and thank you. Remember, if we don't see the comments pop up, we will be answering it. I'll be answering it. Christine will be answering it offline. And I encourage you to connect with Christine Fonner. She's on LinkedIn. She's on the other channels as well. But, LinkedIn may be the best place to reach out to her, as I'm sure she's going to reach out to all of you guys who put in comments, which is, I'm always recommending. Christine, please share with me, how can I be a better leader for my team? I say this, but let me go back and then say it again and ask the same question again. I think I'm doing an okay job. Are there times that I put a little pressure? I challenge them. I think it's a healthy challenge because sometimes we just have to get things done. Um, I've been working with them for about a year. They're very good at what they're doing. And I'm always like, okay, great. We've done this. Where's the next part? And I find myself as a leader, particularly when I'm very busy, if I'm having a very busy day, um, everything comes, like, I see it because I'm either on the computer or I'm doing something. So everything right away, all those points in all the areas come in, and then I do like the quick follow up, which for sometimes they're like, I'm working on it. I'll get back to you. How can I be a better leader for my team, for my business, so that not only can they thrive, I thrive, but anyone who comes in our community, comes in our sphere of influence, they're also thriving?
Great question, right? And I mean, it's a complicated answer. The simplest one that I'll throw out in our short amount of time left is I always say that everybody needs a coach, right? And I
Mhm.
also had mentioned that leadership is type 2 fun, and that comes from a theory around adventure-based learning and kind of outdoor sports world. I spent several years doing multi-day stage racing for mountain biking, and when you get to that level of athleticism to be able to do this really cool adventurous thing, um, you have to train, you have to work hard, you have to depend on some experts to teach you how to do nutrition, how to do your workouts, how to get prepared so that you can go do this like epic adventure to be able to go experience something you've never experienced before that's going to challenge you, transform you, and leave you with an incredible story of capability and pride, right? That's type 2 fun in a nutshell. And we do it because of the end goal, the end result, right? And so wherever you are in your own leadership journey, and I will also iterate here that everybody is a leader. We make 2,700 decisions on average a day. You are a leader, right? So wherever you are in your leadership journey, to know who you are as an expert leader, you need a coach. You need to engage in your own professional network to also get that feedback. And when I say you need a coach, like, how do you know what kind of coach you need? Sometimes my priority is therapy. So my coach is going to be my therapist right now. I got to get through some really emotional stuff, some life stuff that happened. I need some talk therapy. I want to work that out. At the same time, I might say, well, on a physical level, I'm feeling really fatigued and I'm feeling like, I just can't get my body back from this perimenopause. I'm going to get myself a nutrition coach. Sometimes it might be, well, you know what? Conflict resolution is a real problem in my business right now. My team is not working well together. Let me hire Christine and see if we can't do a short cycle on how to do communication better, right? You have to know your needs based on your expertise area and levels and what's going on in your world. That's kind of the discernment piece, right? And that's where it gets fun and you get to go on the adventures. Like, I can put my whole coaching team together, I can put my plan together, and then I'm going to get on the bike and I'm going to ride.
I love it. I agree 100%. Yes, there are different seasons where we need different upgrading or training, and it makes a lot of difference. And also asking your team the same thing. Where, like, how is this relationship going? Where are we at right now? How am I coming across to you? Asking them the question and not being afraid to hear the honest
Mm-hmm.
feedback. I do
Well,
ask
and
them
one
as well.
question you can ask, and a lot of us avoid this question because we're afraid of the answer. One question I love asking my team, and this takes trust, but I
Yeah,
love asking my team, what is my worst trait to you?
yeah. I
What
love it.
drives you nuts about me?
Yeah,
And I don't know if I can change it or not because that's probably who
yeah.
I am, but I want to know, like, what is it like, what about me is the worst part of my leadership to you?
I
Ooh.
love that question. I love that question. I actually asked the head of my team that question a month ago. He didn't answer me yet. He hasn't answered me yet. But I did. And I, like, because I'm not afraid to hear the truth. I want to know the truth because I could only get better. Remember, I'm teaching this stuff as well and I'm
Mhm.
training others. So I want to know from you, you're here one on one, what's going on. But one thing he does tell me, he's like, I learned so much from you, because he has his own business as well and he has his own teams and he's doing all this stuff, so us working together works. Um and he says, like, I genuinely learned so much from you. He's like, you've
Mm.
introduced me to so many people. And for anyone who's wants to know what I'm talking about, he's Naeem Khan, so follow him. He does marketing. I was asking the marketing question for him specifically.
Mm.
um and yeah,
Mhm.
social tamai, and even the psychology of marketing, the psychology of sales. Sometimes we have this discussion on it and I would say, well, why isn't it X, Y, and Z? And he said, well, because
Mm.
we're still EGF.
Mhm.
Right,
Well, I mean, it takes an average of 8 touch points to convince someone to buy
right.
something from you,
Exactly. Well,
right?
I didn't. So it
Mhm.
works out. It works out great. But I love that, if we're honest with ourselves, we're unafraid to get the truth, to receive the truth, so we can make the actual changes that we need to make. How can we? How can we find you? And please
Mm.
share about your PhD research and how everyone, 162 people who are tuned in, how can they tune in to support
Yeah.
you in that?
Well, thank you. Yeah, so you can find me at roamyoursoul.com. It's ROAM, roamyoursoul.com. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok at Roam Your Soul. And yeah, just reach out to me. My PhD work, I'm starting the research on. You can take a survey and share your toxic leadership perceptions and experience. And so if you reach out to me on LinkedIn or at Roam Your Soul, I can send you that link. I have to send it to you because it's part of the research process of making sure it's validated. So if I would love it if you're a woman, if you're a man, you can take it too, but it doesn't count towards my PhD research because I'm focusing on women in leadership and the impacts of women in leadership about toxic leadership. But I'm collecting all leaders because I want to be able to share that data forward as well and really learn from each other in that way and know that leadership is not male or female or masculine or feminine. It's really who we are as whole people, right? And so collecting that data from all of you will help me be able to tell that story better later.
Thank you so much. And for everyone who has stayed tuned from the moment you connected and for all the comments, thank you for all the questions. Thank you. I know we didn't receive any comments or questions from X, but I do know on X they do share a lot of comments and or questions. And they had a couple when I posted that. So let's get that. Oh, Naeem put
Oh,
a
that's
message
so
out
nice.
there about me. So I gotta put this on. I gotta
That's
toot,
so
toot the
nice.
horn there. So he said
Yeah.
Delisa is an inspiring woman who leads with heart and makes a positive impact. Thank you so much, Naeem, for sharing that. Um, I very much appreciate that. Um, and thank you guys for tuning in. Connect with Christine. Uh, Ask her the questions, support her PhD, as well as make sure that if you need her to come in, even if it's to do an assessment or something. I mean, you're getting neuroscience, you're getting experience, you're getting all of these things rolled into one. So thank you so much. Oh, there we go.
Mm.
Thank you, Sabine. Sabine is, and she said, Christine, you are awesome as well. Yes, Sabine is a powerhouse woman. Like she's just fantastic entrepreneur as well. And I definitely hope you both can connect
Mm.
together because you guys are so dynamic. All right. I will leave that there. See you guys next week on another episode of B2B. And don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Bye.